Namaste. Psychoanalysis and philosophy. Worlds in the human world. Worlds constituting the wide human world is an esoteric area. Let us explore this esoteric area with our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya.
Namaste.
Mr. Vaidya, can you explain to us what is meant by worlds that make up the human world?
The word world has many meanings. People use the word world in a variety of contexts. Let us take a look at few of the meanings of this word before we go into the depth of our topic. One meaning of the word world is in the sense it is used as a synonym for the planet Earth. So some people, when they use the word world, they mean the planet Earth. They use it in the sense our world, meaning planet Earth. The second way in which people use this word is to say a synonym of human civilization. So when they say the human world, they exclude from that the animal kingdom or the that part of nature where human beings don't live. And they use the word world to mean an equivalent of human civilization. When people in philosophy use this word, they divide reality into physical reality, life zone, and the zone of mind and society. So they call it the physical world, the living world, and the world of mind and society, the lives along which our university education is divided. Physical sciences, life sciences, and humanities and social sciences and arts. So they use the word world in slightly different way to connote zones of reality. Then we have uh, the political use of the term, which says the world is divided into the communist world and the capitalist world. So there is a political use of the term. Then there is a cultural use of the term to say that there is that part of the world which is the Buddhist world and that part of the world which is the Christian world. And then there is a uh, philosophical use of the term where you go into the origin of the world and the purpose of the world and the Platonic world from where this world could emerge, or that uh, shunya, or that nothingness or everythingness into which this world can ultimately vanish into. And then we have the psychological use of the term world, where we talk about the inner world and the outer world. And when we talk about the inner world, we talk about it in many different ways. Because the inner world is a common area between psychology, philosophy, and spirituality. And therefore, all the three have something to say about the inner world, because all the three are deeply interested in the journey into the inner world. And this is where we will be focusing our discussion today on. So when we say the worlds that make up our world, we are talking about our psychological world. And what are the worlds, the smaller worlds, which make up our entire psychological world? And this is what we are going to focus upon. To have a few views on this particular topic, when psychoanalysis looks into the inner world, it divides the inner world into the conscious world and the unconscious world. It divides the human experience into the inner world and the outer world, and the inner world again is divided into conscious world and the unconscious world. Similarly, when spirituality looks at the inner world, it divides the inner world to be made up of many smaller worlds, each related to one of the chakras. So there will be one world related to the Muladhara chakra, one world related to the Swadhisthana. So seven major chakras, so seven major worlds, and then minor chakras, so minor worlds, and these are elemental worlds. They again come together to create compounded worlds, and the compounded world again come together to create tertiary worlds. It's like the colors, red, blue, green are the three basic colors, but they come together to create secondary colors, and the secondary colors come together to create tertiary colors, and all of them come together to create millions of colors. But elementally, there are only three colors. Similarly, in an elemental sense, there are a few worlds inside of us that interact between themselves to create the whole of our psychological world, of course, in conjunction with the outside world. So, this is what we mean by the word, the phrase, the worlds that constitute our world. By that, we mean the elemental worlds that constitute the whole of our psychological world.
Does this concept relate to the model of the mind and the model of reality?
Yes, very much so. Because if the model of the mind is Freudian, you will say that the inner world is constituted only of the conscious world and the unconscious world. Throw in a bit of a pre-conscious world also, if you like. If you have model of the mind which is Jungian, you will say the inner world is constituted of the conscious world, the unconscious world, the collective unconscious world, and the world of the self. And this is interacting with the outside reality. If the model of the mind is tantric in nature or Eastern or yogic, then you will say the inner worlds are constituted of elemental worlds related to each chakra, and these elemental worlds then come together to create the whole of our psychological world. So, for example, let us say, let us take the example of the feeling of excitement. So when we have that feeling of excitement, if you deconstruct excitement into its elemental feelings, there is some sort of anxiety which is positively loaded into thrill, and there is some sort of happiness, some sort of curiosity, some sort of accomplishment, some sort of a desire having been fulfilled. All these feelings come together to actually create the final feeling of excitement. So excitement is a macro entity constituted by many micro entities coming together. Now these micro entities are coming together from each of the micro worlds which are active inside of us. So the moment the feeling of excitement is active, it becomes active because before it became active, many elements from all these constituent worlds came together to interact between themselves and result in the feeling of excitement. It may happen so fast that we may not know about it. It may happen in such subtle levels, at such subtle levels that our awareness may not reach there. So we may not know what is happening. We may not see the manufacturing process. We may not even be able to understand the manufacturing process. But there is no doubt a manufacturing process where elementals are coming together to construct an entity called excitement, which we feel in a macro way. And these elementals are coming from elemental micro worlds. And these elemental micro worlds, according to the Eastern Tantric or Yogic terminology, there are 7 major elemental worlds and 114 minor elemental worlds, and a few other uh, micro elemental worlds which are not so strong but they are there. So these are what are the essential small worlds, elemental entities which come together to create secondary world, tertiary worlds, and often after that the final feeling that we feel. Unless we are feeling something very raw in its elemental form, then it's a different matter. But most feelings we feel are aggregates of many elementals. So what we feel, we can feel directly the primary entity, or a secondary entity or a tertiary entity or even more macro entity. So this is how the model of the mind and the world's concept is related. Now coming to the part of reality. Once we go into the Eastern concept of these worlds, micro worlds constituting the macro world of feelings which we consciously experience. So what we experience consciously are macro feelings, macro psychological states, and these states are created using elements from micro worlds, which operate usually below the level of our awareness. Now, the Eastern theory takes a step forward and does not just limit with the concept of chakras, each chakra creating an elemental world, these elemental worlds coming together to create secondary, tertiary, and even more macro worlds and psychological entities. But they go a step further. They say that each of the micro worlds, each of the chakras, each feeling, each emotion, each thought in its more elemental form comes to us from some zone of reality, which is zone proper of that entity. Meaning, it talks about that we are constituted of a physical body, energy body, emotional body, thought body, karmic body, and pure consciousness. And each of these bodies is constituted by taking a small part from those zones of the universe where these things belong to. For example, if my weight is 75 kg, I have taken 75 kg from this planet in the form of food. That is how my body has got created. So out of this entire weight of earth, I have taken 75 kg to create my body. Similarly, they say that whatever thoughts you have is a small part of that thought universe. So just as there is a physical universe from which you take a small percentage to create your body, there is a thought universe, there is an emotion universe, there is a karmic universe and a pure consciousness universe. And from these universes, you take a small part to create your system. So the system takes one small part from the physical universe, one small part from the energy universe, light energy universe, one small part from mental universe, emotional universe, karmic universe, and pure consciousness universe to constitute the system. And similarly, when we are feeling any feeling of bliss or uh, excitement or anything, we can manufacture it inside of us, or we can also partake from that universe certain feelings. So this model that is there in the East does not stop with describing the human system as constituted of different bodies and of different worlds corresponding to each of the chakras, major and minor. It goes a step forward and starts describing how the universe is. So there is a model of the human system and there is a model of the universe. And the human system is created according to this view by taking small amounts from each zone of the universe. So this idea of worlds constituting our psychological world is not an autonomous idea. It is linked to a model of reality.
Do these worlds overlap? And if they do, then how does it play out?
Yes, definitely they overlap. In fact, we rarely feel or we rarely see or recognize uh, any entity in its pure elemental form. So whether it is the epistemological process of thinking or the normal process of feeling, usually at the level of our awareness, we feel aggregate entities. We hardly ever feel pure fear without any accompanying thought, or fear only and not accompanied by any other emotion. Most of the times in our system, more than one thought, more than one feelings are active. And more often than not, what we feel is macro feelings like excitement, happiness, uh, positivity, and all this composure, wholesomeness, and all these are macro entities created of many micro entities. So these worlds, say the world of Muladhara Chakra and the world of Swadhisthana, always interact. For example, let us say somebody has uh, envious impulse, and the envy is attributed to Swadhisthana, which means something in the world is active of Swadhisthana. At the same time, there is anxiety because of envy. So something gets activated in the world of Muladhara also. So the very presence of the very activation of something in the world of Swadhisthana activates something in the world of Muladhara. And what we feel is a combination of envy and anxiety. At times we may feel only anxiety and envy may remain unconscious. But both these worlds are active in us and overlapping for that moment. Similarly, in most cases, not only two, but more than two microelemental worlds overlap to create a psychological entity which we consciously experience. If we deconstruct our experience, we'll see that more than one uh, worlds are active, more than one chakras are active.
How does this relate to the idea of a good life?
This brings us to the whole purpose of our discussion. Why have this discussion at all? And why these concepts are so important? These concepts are important because they directly link to two things which are very important to us. One, quality of life, and two, spiritual progress. And because these two are very important to most of us, these concepts are important because they are strongly linked to these two uh, purposes: quality of life and spiritual progress. These words that we are referring to, we can divide on a scale of +7 to -7. Nothing sacrosanct about 7. You can divide +10 to -10 also. But I have chosen this as an example because of one particular reason. So let us say we divide all these worlds that constitute in elemental forms our psychological world on a scale of -7 to +7. And let us say +7 to +5 is the zone of very high happiness, ecstasy, progress, all the positive things at their peak. And then some worlds are the worlds which are normal worlds in which you and I live most of the time. Not very happy, not very sad. And below zero, from 0 to -7, are the worlds of difficulty, the worlds of gloom, of suffering, of disappointment, of pain, of sickness, of torture, and so on. So, for example, let us say if somebody is humiliated by somebody, before humiliation, the person was on a scale from 0 to 3, he was in the normal zone. Those worlds were active, constituting his state. But the moment humiliation came, the something at -4, something at -5 got activated. The feeling of anger, the feeling of pain, the feeling of helplessness. So those chakras which are related with these particular feelings got activated and worlds were created about those chakras with full emotions of these types. And these emotions that overwhelm the person, and in the full psychological state of the person, they started taking hold of the whole state. And therefore, the person feels nothing but this negative emotion for quite some time before they settle down. So, the Buddhist literature talks about 14 different worlds. in which human beings live across their life. And most of the time we live in the normal worlds. Let us say mathematically we can put it on a scale of 0 to 4 to make things simpler. So when we are very happy, when we are progressing very well, when we get fame, we can say that we are at 5 to 7 scale, and those corresponding worlds are active. The worlds of Sahasra, which gives you bliss, which gives you ecstasy, the higher worlds of the heart chakra, which gives you very good feelings, those worlds are active. And when you are beaten up, when you are tortured, let us say you are tortured by police or army or anybody, then the worst of the worlds get active and you are actually at a scale from -5 to -7. So this is how the Buddhists view it. In the Indian, in the more ancient Hindu form of it, there is this mention of the Svargalok, the Bhulok and the Patalok. And Patalok refers to those states which we go into from -5 to -7 or maybe -2 to -7. And in the Western conceptualization, there are 7 heavens and 7 hells. And these are worlds which are understood in two ways. One, that these worlds are inside of us, and every human being visits every world at least once in his lifetime. But the quality of life is decided by in which world are you spending most of your time. So this is how you look at it in an inside way. In an outside way, people talk about it that these inside 14 worlds are actually small samples of 14 worlds outside also, which a man goes through after his death based upon his karma. So there is an outside conceptualization also of this inner world, that these inner worlds are actually samples of the outside zones of universe. And in those zones, one has to go based upon one's karma and spend adequate corresponding amount of time in each of the zones. So there is a conceptualization in the Buddhist framework, in the ancient Indian Vedic framework, in the Christian framework, and in many other frameworks across the world of different kind of worlds that constitute us inside, and they being samples of the world outside. And the law of karma or justice is said to work in both ways. That part of the karmic justice happens by visiting the lower worlds, the painful worlds while one is alive, and whatever is left out is then uh, experienced after death, either at once or in installments. So this is how not only do the worlds interact, but they create a sort of a continuum. And there is a large amount of literature in mythology, mysticism, and spirituality on this kind of description of the inner world constituted of many worlds to which we go based upon our free choices and our karmic load. And a similar kind of thing happening once we die to the soul.
We have just talked about like, is there a idea of a good life? So the next question is obviously, I mean, how does one remain in the more pleasant worlds?
Yeah. So ultimately, we are talking about the same thing in different terms. Like when we talk about quality of life, in usually in the more secular and everyday colloquial terms, we talk about productivity, we talk about relationships, we talk about happiness, we talk about uh, cheerfulness, energy levels, and so on. Similarly, we can talk about quality of life in different terminology also. And this terminology is a terminology of the worlds. And we can say that the more we are able to live in the higher positive worlds, or at least in the neutral zone, normal zone, and less time we spend in the lower worlds of 0 to -7, the better is the quality of life. And if you are very unfortunate, then you spend more time in the worst of the worlds of -7 and -6, which is what happens to people who have some very difficult sickness which gives a lot of pain, or people who are tortured, or people who meet an accident or burn and suffer very unbearable pains. So those are the ones who are spending quite an amount of time in very lower worlds of -6 and -7. So when you look at quality of life from this point of view, we want to maximize our stay in the higher worlds. And the higher worlds, the central worlds and the lower worlds, we can easily give uh, details of each. Like what are the feelings at level 7? We can put ecstasy, we can put bliss. At level 6, we can put delight, we can put happiness. And similarly, we can put feelings to all the uh, worlds. We can actually make a table of the worlds, the feelings which are predominant active in those worlds when we enter there, the thoughts, the state of our being, and outcome to us and outcome to society. And then we come to the point of how to stay better in the higher world. This brings us to a very important question. No one wants to go into a lower world, then why are we sucked into it? And this relates, the answer to this partly has to do with our psychopathology, and partly to do with our karmic load, and partly to do with accidents that happen to us. And because of this, it creates a force which overwhelms us and forces us to live in those worlds where we don't want to live. It is not that we don't try to get out, it is just that we don't have the power enough to get out. And therefore, psychotherapy, spirituality are very good ways to enhance our quality of life and work with in a systematic way to maximize our stay in better worlds and avoid the difficult worlds.
A mention of psychotherapy and spirituality has brought us to our next question, which is how does this connect to psychoanalysis?
Psychoanalysis is in a way quite pessimistic. So first, the moment we talk about the worlds, good world, psychoanalysis will call it the search of the all good breast. And psychoanalysis will remind us that it is not possible in reality. In reality, what will happen is you will spend most of the time in the normal zone with occasional visits to the higher worlds and lower worlds. And this is what it is. There is nothing better to be done, nowhere else to go. This is life, and we have to train ourselves for reality acceptance. That is the very realistic orientation, in my view, a pessimistic orientation that psychoanalysis takes. When we look at psychoanalysis, it also uh, gives us explanations of why we are forced to live in the lower zones, in the lower worlds. And psychoanalysis not only tells us that uh, negative emotions are active in the lower zones, but it also gives us phenomena through which those effects get active. So if we are talking about guilt and shame, psychoanalysis talks about Oedipus, that the Oedipal phenomena gives rise to guilt and shame. If we talk about destructive rage, something in psychoanalysis tells us it may be because of envy. When we talk about rage, psychoanalysis talks about the struggle of survival and anger as a defensive mechanism. So psychoanalysis tells us in its own language as to why we are forced to live in the lower worlds and what can be done. And what can be done naturally here is psychoanalytic psychotherapy. And of course, you can go for other forms also, other forms of psychotherapy, to get out of these lower worlds and be free from it, from the factors that pull you into the lower world. And psychoanalysis does not use the language of worlds. It uses the language of health and pathology, of complexes and freedom, of the rule of the ego versus the rule of the id. Whereas the religious and the spiritual schools use a different language of these worlds, that you are caught up in a world which is a negative world, a world of torture or a world of negative feelings, and you have to extract oneself out of it and go into the positive worlds, almost as though inside there was a line of spheres and you have to come out of one sphere, extract yourself and go into a higher sphere and live there, almost like taking an aeroplane, getting out of one planet and going into another planet. And this kind of visualization instantly offers you distance and objectivity and enhances your ego strength. And psychoanalysis therefore offers knowledge about the causes and a way of psychoanalytic psychotherapy of understanding insight and catharsis as a way out if we are trapped in the lower worlds.
How about CBT? How would CBT look at this?
Yeah, it is also one more approach, because let us say you are caught in depression. Then when we use the language of the world, we will say you are somewhere at 5, 6 or 7 based upon mild, moderate or severe depression. So you are at -5, -6 or -7, and correspondingly each spiritual system, whether it is a Buddhist system or a Vedic system or a Jain system or any other system, will give names to those worlds or those lokas. They will give some names. Now, CBT will start working on the thought aspect of it, because it will say that you are trapped into a lower world because of a wrong thought pattern, and your thought pattern can be corrected. You will move out of that lower world and you will be free to go to a higher world. So uh, the ticket of taking the flight from the lower to the higher world is insight and change of thought. So CBT essentially bases itself on change in thought, whereas psychoanalysis essentially bases itself on insight and catharsis.
Uh, so next question goes to now. How does Indian spirituality engage with this subject?
Uh, in a variety of ways. First, Indian spirituality gets into this thing along with a philosophy of how reality is, along with the philosophy of how a human system is constituted. And Indian spirituality also uh, sort of normalizes the travel through the lower worlds. In fact, the Western approach is a very monocolor approach. It's a very Abrahamical approach, a binary approach, that all the good worlds are good and all worlds below zero are bad, and one should always be in the good, and the bad is nothing more than a pathology, nothing more than a misfortune. However, in the East, the occasional journey into the bad worlds of gloom, of disappointment, of resignation, of anger, fear, pain, guilt, shame, envy, this even what DSM, many times DSM would call a pathology. So many of the pathologies that DSM describes, uh, I'm not saying everyone who has the pathology is innocent, but many of those actually are passing through a spiritual process. And therefore, those who are passing through a spiritual process, they essentially over a period of time self-heal. And this is what explains self-healing even when somebody is being treated by a psychiatrist or psychotherapist. and one knows that it is not the treatment but self-healing which has healed the person. Many times it happens, people go to a psychiatrist or therapist and then stop going to them because nothing is happening. So they give up the medication or the therapy, and yet after some time they get healed because some self-healing process was in motion. So many of the journeys into these lower worlds, which in DSM language we would call the onset of pathology, uh, many of those experiences, many of those episodes essentially are seen by spirituality very positively as uh, not necessary but often coincidental with the spiritual journey. And in very large proportion of people who are into the spiritual journey or doing some sort of inner journey, moving through those pathological states or having pathology for some temporary period of time is quite normal from a spiritual standpoint. Not only that, for spirituality, going into each of these worlds and purifying these worlds is very important. And therefore, even if pathology is not pulling you into the world, you consciously enter into the world and you try to clean up the world. So, in fact, you are going out there to invite pathology, so to say, from a DSM standpoint. Because when you enter into a world, it's going to be a peak before it falls down forever. So, there's going to be a temporary aggravation of pathology, and you are inviting a temporary aggravation of pathology by going into that world. If you read Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, there is a very good description of in that book. There is a complete uh, part of that book, a complete canto, uh, which talks about, which is titled "The Book of Traveler of the Worlds," and there Sri Aurobindo describes his own travel through all these micro worlds, both inside and macro worlds outside, and mother's travel through those worlds inside and outside, and gives a very detailed explanation and the yogic experiences he had in each of those worlds. So, this concept of these worlds is a very important and comprehensively written about and practiced concept in the world of spirituality, but we have still not taken it up in psychoanalysis so much. So
I think, yeah,
spirituality not
yeah.
only as a concept, not only sees it positively, travel through all the worlds, but purify all the worlds by consciously going into it, and to go into each world, purify it and come back, there is a basket full of tools and procedures.
I think in Jungian or depth psychology, as we call it, I think there is a lot of importance given to this whole thing of descent into the lower world. So, which maybe comes close to this idea of how spirituality engages with this.
Yes, because both in Jungian psychology and in spirituality, uh, many people accept that descent and ascent, they are sort of cyclical. So after a few steps of ascent, there is a temporary descent, and then again the ascent begins. It's almost like the developmental process is like an upward moving spiral. It's not a linear line. It's an upward moving spiral.
So we've talked about this connection with psychoanalysis, CBT, depth psychology, and spirituality. So now, how does this connect have something for therapy?
In therapy, we have just not used this concept because we don't even know about it. Very few people even know about it. So once we know about this concept, we can start talking in terms of it. And once we start talking in terms of it, we go into the elemental entities which are operating there, and we learn the elemental entities and their dynamics. And once we learn that, we develop a new language, one more set of tools to understand and manage the psyche. So, uh, for example, once we are familiar with this whole idea of the worlds, we can talk about it to the person who comes for therapy, and it makes it very easy because the moment you talk about something in terms of the worlds, and almost as though you're taking a flight from one world to the other, instantly it creates a sense of detachment, objectivity, and distance. And that empowers and strengthens the ego and the superego. It reduces the overwhelming dark grip of the id over our will.
Right.
That is one. Two, it makes the inner world a sort of a playroom that one can go into each of the worlds consciously and come back. Or one can view one's day that across the day I have been in these worlds. And third, and that makes it understanding it very easy and comprehensive. Third, it brings in the whole element of balance and comprehensiveness. And this is a very important concept in the East, comprehensive balance, holistic balance. And even in Ayurveda, it is so that in Ayurveda, you not only balance the Kapha, Pitta, and Vata, but you carry the concept of comprehensive balance at every level. For example, when you sit to eat, it is said the plate should have all the six rasas in different proportions, six tastes in different proportions. So there is a kind of comprehensive balancing. No taste is left out and everything is in right proportion. So this comprehensive judicious balancing is there, and that applies to the world of worlds also. That how much should one live in each of these worlds per day? So instead of living in a binary where we say, I only want happiness and I don't want to experience sadness, it is more courageous and more comprehensive to say, I will experience consciously sadness for a short period of time. And maybe when I come out, I'm able to appreciate happiness much better. Not only that, it increases my emotional immunity, builds up my emotional muscle and my understanding and my ability to manage that world of gloom and sadness because I have consciously gone in and come out. So this conscious, what Sri Aurobindo says, calls the traveler of the worlds, the traveler of the inner worlds. So once we become a tourist of the inner world with a multiple entry visa, we are able to uh, understand the inner playroom in a far more playful and non-fearful way, and almost with a relish of spice and different flavors and tastes inside. And this allows us to approach the inner flavor, inner system in a much easier way. We also can know how to activate or deactivate certain worlds or how to get out of it. And for this, there is a basket full of tools in spirituality and mysticism. And those tools also will come in once we appreciate this concept, because using this concept as a system for thousands of years, somebody has undertaken inner journey, faced the problems and deal the problems to some degree of efficiency and effectiveness. So there is a distilled knowledge of tradition, may not be 100% true, but still substantially valuable. And uh, this idea of the worlds also brings with it the whole holistic element of how to live out different worlds. So the psychotherapeutic journey does not remain only a journey on the couch. It also becomes a living journey in the outside world. And that correcting thing, I think, is very needed, given that unfortunately therapy has become more of a journey on the couch. And lastly, this whole concept will bring to us a new focus on model of the mind and the manufacturing process of an emotion or an emotional state or a psychological state. And this will take us deeper than where we are, because at present we are not going into the manufacturing process of the psychological state. So all of this, uh, along with uh, variety and the flavor of something new and something relishable, will come in to psychoanalysis, almost like the Rush theory coming into psychoanalysis in a more structural and a more clinical context. So I think if we bring in these concepts, uh, we will not only be providing variety is the spice of life, but also bring in a new language and a new focus on certain aspects of what we are doing.
I just want to share a thought. As you just mentioned that, this concept of words, if it is explained to the client or the person in front of you, it can help him kind of come out of it, or kind of, play in the world rather than getting sucked by the negative feelings. So that's one aspect of it. But how, I mean, as a therapist, what are the tips, or how does a therapist do this? Because we have like different orientations, like psychoanalysis or Jungian therapy or CBT or REBT, whatever. So this concept of worlds is very new to a therapist or a student.
First is the therapist has to know the concept of worlds. Second, he has to know what are these major worlds. So when we talk about the world of worlds, we will have to look at some frameworks. Some people talk about 14 elemental worlds. Some people talk about 10. Whatever system you use, what are they? And in each of the worlds, which thoughts and emotions are at the center of that world, and which chakra the world is associated to. And once we have this basic knowledge, then we can start linking it to pathology. That in pathology X, this world is hyperactive and we have to balance by going into this world. And why this hyperactivity is there and why the journey is so difficult. And when we talk in these terms to the client, it becomes much easier and far less pathological and clinical. It becomes more of a relishable, positive talk in its flavor. And that makes quite amount of difference uh, to many people. Not to everyone, of course, but to many people. And then we have to create a language where we can talk about these worlds and link it to the language we already know, the language of the psychoanalytic phenomena, the language of affect, the language of epistemology of thought, and so on. And once we are able to force that language, then comes the point of bringing that thing into therapy. Otherwise, bringing this knowledge into therapy itself is a task, because it requires quite an amount of innovation in terms of conceptual understanding of linking the two, our present understanding and this concept, and in creating a new language which we can talk to the client.
Right. So a very broad-based knowledge of different orientations is required for the therapist,
Yes.
at least to begin with, before it can go to the synthesizing and then communicating it to the client.
Yes, and if it is too difficult, then I think it would be a good idea to go for a training program of 1 or 2 days where this can be honed up.
Thank you, Mr. Vaidya. It has been a pleasure to discuss this very enigmatic and rare topic. And I think we look forward to some more interesting topics like this,
Sure enough.
and get enriched in our knowledge on that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. Do write to us at hveindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.